have what's called a dark night of the soul, maybe when they start realizing, like, oh, there's a strong disconnection from how I'm living my.
Following again what society's conditioned your life is supposed to be. You don't even know who you are anymore, what makes you happy, why you're doing what you're doing, and you're in that production
Mhm.
mode.
We're conditioned to kind of be these sort of machines. But how are you spiritually?
If healing wasn't needed, there might not be a healing train for us to hop on to have these painful conversations and address the wounds that need to be healed. Whether we are aware of our wounds or they are suppressed or ignored, we have them. They linger in the background. They show up in triggers. They appear in our reactions, in our day to day lives. And they will be that culprit you can't get rid of until you face it head on. Thank you for joining me on yet another season of the Healing Train podcast. I'm Rania, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, a self made woman, a fighter, a light worker. I show up here in this space hoping to make a difference in just one person's life. If that's you, I'm happy you found me. And if you know someone who will benefit from these talks, share it, comment, share your thoughts, experiences, share your wins, share your struggles. Join me on the special episodes I announce on this show where your voice can be heard. Yes, you. Your story matters too. The lessons you learned can help another soul. So come aboard the Healing Train every Wednesday, where we will laugh, cry, and heal together. With over 22 years of branding experience, including a BFA in Communications Design from Pratt Institute in NYC, Jennah is a seasoned creative director and graphic artist known for bringing clarity and purpose to visual and voice expression. She intuitively channels design while also collaborating with skilled freelance creatives to ensure the perfect fit for each project. Throughout her career, she has worked with a diverse range of visionary clients and world-changing brands. As a freelancer in NYC, she honed her expertise by contributing to the highest standards of creative work, designing for Graphies and the One Club for art and copy. She also played a pivotal role as art director and designer for the first two national advertising campaigns for Burt's Bees. In 2011, she returned to her home state of Colorado, expanding her work to support small businesses, including solopreneurs, coaches, authors, and healers. As a soul guide with global experience, she brings a deep understanding and sensitivity to her clients, making her a sought after creative partner for those looking to align their brand with authenticity and purpose. Jennah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here today.
Jennah, there's a quote here about The Lonely Path by the Mind Journal. It says, "Don't worry if your path seems lonely right now. You are simply removing energies that no longer match the frequency of your future. You will soon attract people who truly deserve to walk that path with you." And what a powerful quote for us to start our episode today.
Absolutely. That's a good one.
Now, Jennah, you and I connected, and I immediately felt a connection between us in our belief system, in how we do things. We're both entrepreneurs and we understand the struggles. And our conversation was just so interesting. I knew that recording this podcast with you would just be brilliant. I'd like to begin asking you the very first question. How can we recognize when we are disconnected from our true selves, and what are we relying on instead to survive in this world?
Yeah, I find there's a number of ways that we realize we're disconnected. Or for me, it can be, and to break it down in maybe more of a like framework, I like to look at things in terms of the etheric bodies a little bit, right? There's the emotions, the way we feel.
Mhm.
So often there'll be emotions that bubble up, whether it's anger or sadness, and those are normal, and those are natural,
Mhm.
right? But those come out, I think, when we start to reconnect. And it's funny, I started with emotions because I think those are almost like the last layer we get to. I think
Sometimes
what
we
a
like
lot
to
of
work backwards, and that's okay.
yeah, I think what a lot of people focus on first is the physical. What it really takes for people to notice the disconnection sometimes when there's like a chronic pain showing up, phantom pains even, or then it's like trying to figure it out, like why does my neck hurt or why does this plantar fasciitis show up? And those can be symptoms of just ignoring the connection so long that it's showing up physically. So I think pain in the body is one big way
Mhm.
that guides people to find that connection again. And then there's layers from that. There's the mental layers, right? When there's often thoughts of anxiety or stress or cycles of overanalyzing,
Mhm.
blaming others, like a too much focus on the other
Mhm.
and not enough focus on the self. That's a sign of disconnection. Then the emotional stuff that comes up around kind of the abandonment of self, right? That can be another way to phrase disconnection is the abandonment of self.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's also the spiritual, that's the fourth etheric body, the soul or the spiritual, which sometimes is a little more harder to explain. I remember once I had an elder friend of mine ask, "But how are you spiritually?" And
Mm.
I really had to pause for a second, and I immediately actually started crying when he asked that. And to me, the connection with spirit is almost that guiding light. So in times in my life when I've become so disconnected from my path, right?
Mm.
Because that connection with spirit is like my soul's path, like what I'm was born to do, what I was meant to be doing. And it doesn't have to necessarily mean something specific, like a specific creation. It could,
Mhm.
but even just more that on a day-to-day basis, I'm living in integrity with my heart and my soul and that learning process. That's where I think people have what's called a dark night of the soul, maybe when they start realizing, like, oh, there's a strong disconnection from how I'm living my day-to-day life to what I feel like is my purpose or what I'm meant to be doing.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the four areas because as you're talking, saying, how are you spiritually? I just realized that question is rarely ever asked between people. There are usually two main questions we ask is how are you doing health-wise, so physically, and
Hmm.
we dare ask sometimes with those who we can, how are you emotionally? We
Yeah.
never ask, how are you doing mentally? And we
Yep.
rarely ever ask, how are you spiritually? That is very interesting now that I think about it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
See, more realizations. More realizations are coming up as we are having these conversations and we are reflecting, right?
Yep.
So, any other reasons we can get to those points of disconnect?
Hmm. Perfectionism
Mm.
might be another,
Mm.
where there's the expectation on self, right?
Mhm.
Which can go hand in hand with the comparison. I think that treating the self not well, eating tons of junk
Mhm.
food,
These are
uh,
factors for sure. Our diet plays a huge factor.
yeah, not moving the body, being in a space of focusing, operating from fear,
Mm-hmm.
in a space of, yeah, forcing yourself to do work. There's
Mm-hmm.
the fear if you don't do work,
Mm-hmm.
everything's going to fall apart, right? Which is kind of the perfectionism, but we're conditioned to kind of be these sort of machines. I was watching a Instagram this morning. It was totally normal for mothers to sleep with their children
Mm-hmm.
until sometime around the Industrial Revolution. There were two specific men who started saying it was better to isolate your baby to let them cry because they had to basically design a whole program or conditioning
Mm,
around how mothers and families could work more, how they could fit into this industrial revolution society and start, isolating and controlling children. I think that's a lot is that conditioning why we're doing the things we do when we wake up in the morning. Like why are people drinking, 3 cups of coffee and throwing themselves in the car to get to work? And I mean, I do this myself. I don't drink coffee, but I'll notice myself getting into the mode of like, oh, I've just got to do something to make myself go start working, right? It's
mm,
the motivating self. Whereas yesterday I had an experience with this where I was like, okay, I'm gonna, drink my cacao. It's my ritual connection. But I noticed I was still even using that, like, oh, I'll have my cacao and then I'll do work. But I still felt this like heaviness of having to push myself like
mm,
into it where okay, I said I'm going to let go of that, let myself relax till I actually feel like doing something.
mhm, mhm.
I think that's part of when you're connected to yourself, there's more of an integrated, seamless way to create and way to take action and way to be with everything in the world. So it's not to like say all the things we need to do to survive are bad, but it's how we're relating to them. How connected are we in presence as we're going through each action?
Well, I definitely agree with you that we are living in a conditional style of society where we don't even know where these patterns or habits are coming from.
Yeah.
There are times when we question, there are few of us that question, but many of us don't question.
Mhm.
They see it as the norm and they're like, "Hey, everyone's living life like this, and that's the normal for them." And they normalize it. They normalize the disconnect. They normalize the doing, not the being. They normalize the rules that came out of nowhere and make no sense whatsoever,
Mhm.
right? So we are here trying to fit in a box, right? We're trying to follow the crowd just so we can
Mhm.
fit in. Otherwise, we will be left alone. And in a way, it's punishment. We will feel left out. We will have the lonely path, which relates to the quotation I was reading earlier, is that when you decide to stop following, when you start questioning, right, you will start to do things differently. You will stand out. People will look at you as you are the abnormal because you're not following like everybody else is, right? And that's when you will
Mhm.
experience the lonely path. But what happens to us though when we do live that life, when we're not our true self and we are disconnected? What does that picture look like for us? I mean, we all know how our lives look like, but let's look at it from a different perspective now. If you may share some insights on that.
Mhm. Well, I think it's kind of like detaching from the matrix, right? There's like a certain machine that maybe we're used to operating in. I lived in New York City for 9 years, so I could even use this as a metaphor. Like in New York City, like going around the city and taking the subway everywhere and going to work and all that stuff. And then I moved back to where I'm from in Colorado, where there's more nature. It's not quite the machine. And it wasn't until I went back and visited New York that I really realized, wow, this is like it's like a machine. I think when we start to question how everything's set up and the systems and structures that are designed for us to operate within for, a sense of security, control, or both, kind of like unplugging from that, like as if we're like a nodule in that system, and
Mhm.
then unplugging the self, right? And then there's an initial, yeah, feeling of isolation. There can be grief that comes up. There can be challenges, the hero's journey, right? Whenever someone does something different than the pre-laid out system or structure of the family, of the culture of the society, the realizing the isolation, the disconnect, the feeling weird or being the black sheep, the judgment that can come with it. But then ultimately, there's the connection with self. There's space for that connection with self. I've done this a number of times in my life, I guess, with different things, leaving Colorado to go to school in New York City. So that was a big shift. So I got to experience that. Okay, what's it like to find myself in this new environment?
I'm sure it was shocking for you, wasn't it? Mm,
It was, but it was fun because it was like my soul felt like this is what I am meant to be doing.
okay.
So there were aspects like, oh my God, how do I make friends? I mean, which I think any college freshman goes through to a certain degree of if you're not going to college with your childhood friends. How do I make friends? How do I live in this space?
It comes with the
And
age where you're at,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
different,
yeah,
different phase of life. I mean, if we're looking back at it now from where we
yeah,
are, we recognize we were in a different frame of mind altogether.
yep. Yeah, and there's these different stages throughout life. Maybe they're pivotal moments where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, time to kind of create more space to connect with the self more, to leave behind what's no longer serving. Then again, when after being in New York for 7 or 8 years, I was called to go to Santa Fe to when my nephew was born, when my sister was going to be a single mother, bringing my nephew into the world. And
How's the vibe there?
yeah, it was very different. That's where I connected with like my spiritual intuitive path. I started taking classes, learning about my intuition, my energy, my soul. And those were always like a yes, like, those times in your life where you're like, yes, I just have to do this. And that's an example of, I think, following my soul. Like, how are you spiritually? It's like my sister's like, I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh, yes, I'm coming to Santa
Hmm.
Fe to help. And then, yes, I'm taking this class. Yes, I'm taking this class. And it was like this just,
You were
yeah,
saying yes to life.
yeah, that I didn't even
You were
have to think
going with the
about.
flow and
Hmm.
not allowing any of the conditioning that you at this point have already been experiencing to control you or to direct your path. You allowed
Hmm.
yourself to let the path show itself to you.
Yeah, and with that, I had to work with changing my friendships, all the friends I had made in New York. I mean, I'm still friends with many of them today, but the more as I connected with myself and became more comfortable with who I am or who I am in every chapter of my life, it reminds me of Osho. I don't know if you've studied Osho at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about loneliness, the difference between loneliness and
Yeah.
aloneness.
Yeah. Yeah. Aloneness is a
And how
choice
yeah,
of
loneliness is
choosing
like the victim.
solitude for your own self. Yeah, and loneliness is a lack because you're depending
Yep.
on it from an external source to be provided to you, and because you feel you're missing it, then you're
Yep.
feeling lonely. And that happens a lot. That's why they want to be in relationships all the time because they feel lonely. They
Mm-hmm.
have never learned how to be on their own and find happiness within themselves and to keep themselves occupied and not always have to be doing something with someone, just the
Mm-hmm.
being, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're missing in our society. And that's a huge disconnect point right there that we're
Mm-hmm.
leading to. I hope you're okay that we're going into that direction. Goes back to the conditioning of continuously having to do something, to produce, to live up to a certain criteria to be able to say you're successful. You have to do these things like a checklist, right? Finish college or university, you have a diploma or a degree of some sort. Great. Next, now go get a good job. Okay, done with that? Great. Let's go find a husband now. For women, I'm talking, right? And for men, probably go find a wife, right? Okay, now you're done. Okay, let's have babies. Build a family because,
Yep.
chop, chop, chop. You got no time to waste. And you lose yourself in all of that, following again what society's conditioned your life is supposed to be. You don't even know who you are anymore, what makes you happy, why you're doing what you're doing. And you're in that production
Mm-hmm.
mode. Let's talk about the importance to shift the need to produce
Mm-hmm.
versus allowing yourself to be creative and
Mm-hmm.
allowing yourself to follow your intuition. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about that.
Yeah, there's an aspect in life, right, with relationships where There's the difference between codependence, and interdependence. And it can happen in relationships with family or finding that production, right? Of finding the husband, finding that having kids. And but it can also happen with creative projects too. I think there's always like a void, the way kind of creativity works. We can look at how the seasons of the earth work. I mean, not everywhere has seasons, but even a plant, for example, right, has a phase of there's a seed
Mhm.
that if it's nourished and watered, it sprouts, it grows, it buds, it blossoms, it dies, right? So that's the creative cycle, is how nature works. And the soul, the spirit, works a lot like that too. Following your intuition is kind of like the water or the fertilizer. When you follow your intuition, that is what is that water or that nourishment that creates that growth, those cycles of growth. And even in that place of the seed, there's a void that wants to be filled. It's a human instinct. It's a survival instinct for the plants and people, the survival instinct. But when we fill it with toxic things, it's not going to grow in the same way.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I think that production energy or the force to produce something is a little bit that toxic energy. So the seed still might grow,
Mhm.
but it's growing through this machine, this system. That's why a lot of people have the pain in their bodies because they're forcing themselves to grow through the structure or this box that isn't necessarily in resonance or alignment with their soul and their spirit. And their intuition might be telling them to try something different, right? But it's scary because that framework, that system almost creates a sense of safety, but it's like a prison that creates a sense of security. But some souls who want to live a different sort of life and grow in a different way, I think that's where the intuition to question and listen to that deeper inner voice that might have a different sense of integrity. We talk a lot about integrity in our world, but there's two types of integrity, right? There's integrity of following the rules, like you always show up on time, you always make people happy, you do what you're supposed to do in your life, you follow the rules. And then there's the type of integrity of listening to your intuition
Mhm.
and that, like, yes, right? Like you phrased it, following your yes, that spiritual soul integrity, which I think a lot of people are scared of that because they think it could be harmful or it can be disruptive, to what
Well,
other
it
people
can
are
be. It
doing.
will be. It
It
will
can
be
be,
disruptive.
but it doesn't have to be a bad disruptive.
A brief stop at a station. This show is proudly sponsored by Say It Out Loud GG, led by the inspiring Judith Diaz, an avid change maker and passionate advocate for speaking up and raising awareness. The Healing Train podcast is honored to have her support. Now let's get back to the show. You mentioned just briefly your phases with going to New York and leaving home of Colorado and then going to Santa Fe and following your intuition and going back to New York. Can you share
Mhm.
with us more about how you embraced your creative nature, which now changed your life?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been diving in. Whatever I feel called to do, I dive in fully, but
Mm.
then I give myself permission to move on from it once it's time to shift from it. And that's hard, I think, but that's kind of what creativity is. It's the aspect of the plant that when it's time to shed the leaves and time for them to die, they need to compost into something new. In Santa Fe, I started doing the intuitive classes. I joined spiritual communities. I took every single class that existed. I've done this and that coaching training, spiritual teacher who said, well, the only thing you take with you when you die is your spiritual growth.
Mm.
So, so I've definitely invested a lot in that. And that's kind of led me to, it's almost like a crucible in a certain way to where it's like all the conditioning gets cleared out, it gets deprogrammed, and then the only option is to create from that pure place.
Mm.
And then from there, a new way kind of gets woven. There's a lot of people who talk about like a new earth. I mean, Eckhart Tolle wrote that book, and which I actually thought of earlier in our conversation when you were talking about the relationships we get involved with. And it's like people almost bond over their pain, right? They bond over this pain of asking how we are physically and maybe emotionally. And there's like a bonding that happens. But in the new earth, it's much more about reweaving how everything's created, how we choose to live out each day, each moment, and how we choose to be in relationships from a more generative, co-creative place, like a sense of that true abundance
Mhm.
really does have to do with who we are being
Mm.
and then what we are choosing to create and how we are interacting with other people.
Mhm.
So acknowledging that there's difficulties in that process and in any birthing process, there's pain, there's contraction, there's expansion. In relationships, there's can be communication challenges, or everyone, has their wounding that they came in with or developed in this lifetime. But it's how we choose to move through the difficult things that's almost like that creative compost or fuel, the willingness to let go of what's not serving and allow the pure kind of new creative vibration to flow through.
Mm.
And that creates a lot more resilience, I think, and like fortified strength and what's possible and like a true sense of abundance and connection with spirit, connection with God, however you want to
Mhm.
call it. It's very different than, manufactured manifestation. I
Actual manifestation.
learned that from someone recently.
All right. So while you were speaking, I was just wondering if you had a pivotal moment in your life where everything changed.
For me, it's probably leaving, and it's not just one relationship, but leaving unhealthy relationships
Mm.
that I was in, for many years. I think there was one, of my partner and clients, and it's like really saying no to those long-term unhealthy relationships, which kind of stemmed back to my own maybe familial, relational imprinting growing up.
Right.
Those things I learned in my own nervous system and how that created codependency. Perfect, petri dish for toxicity.
Yes. Yes.
And both it takes two for that to happen too. So when I really decided to let go of my fear and just leave, just say, no, I'm done with this. I think that is a pivotal moment for
And
me
all
for
brings you to
yeah.
the point of where you are right now.
Mhm.
The phases,
Yep.
the challenges, the wins. I mean, we're so consumed with looking at what went wrong.
Hmm.
Don't think about our wins. Let's
Hmm.
talk about our wins. I'd love for you now to share what you do, how you show up in the world.
There was a quote that was like, you can make yourself crazy trying to figure out why something happened the way it happened, or you can choose peace, something like that. So that's really what I had to get to as I decided to change, right? And start choosing peace, start focusing on what is good, being grateful for what happened, what is happening, and what I know will happen. In this process of kind of really stepping into this chapter of my life, I worked with a mentor and I started working with this cacao that it's called Legacy Cacao. It's about leaving your legacy of love on the planet through who you are and what you choose to create is one of the things. I mean, you can always look at their website for how they express it, right? Because I think the creator of any company, which I know as someone who helps people with their brands, that's my company, is called New Earth Brands. Every expression of something someone chooses to create in their business or their brand, you know, your name of your podcast here, the Healing Train podcast, right? It's a deeper calling.
Mm.
And the owner of the business is the channel. But I can share about, you know, my experience of working with the plant medicine. It did help me reconnect with this sense of being and this deeper sense of creation within myself and my connection to the planet and the earth beyond any sort of production. It's allowed me to, yeah, really understand and embody this phrase, new earth, right? Like I said, there's the book by Eckhart Tolle. It's New Earth is actually a phrase that's used in other religions too. I think in Christianity, they even talk about the new earth. So there's different spiritual traditions and religions. All of them have this new earth concept, right? Even though their philosophies might be very different. And for me, it is about embracing that there's a next chapter of life. My life, I think there's a next chapter of life on the earth. Before the Industrial Revolution and in ancient times is very different on the planet, and people were a lot more connected to the earth and the planet and nature and that wisdom. And there's a resurgence of that. And we're in a time where we have technology. And so to me, the new earth isn't like an either or. It's a both and. Actually, someone the other day was talking about this, how the technology or the internet is almost like the nervous system of the collective. And I've always said that technology kind of shows us how we work as souls or intuition, right? The fact that we can instantaneously message someone across the world is kind of how telepathy works. You know, we have this screen in front of us where we can envision things. It's
Mm.
similar to how your ability to see, your clairvoyance works.
Mhm.
It's all kind of an expression, I think, that reflects back to us how our own operating system works with our body, our soul, and our mind. In my business, the name New Earth Brands came to me just out of thin air. I mean, being in branding, I've rebranded myself a number of times with different inspirations and muses and things, but this one felt like it came from a really deeper integrated level that was a calling. Like my old brand name was Soulful Brand, which I loved. It
Mhm.
was very much about the individual soul of the business.
Mhm.
But I was noticing this like collective calling. Almost all my clients coming to me had this deeper calling. It didn't matter if they were coaches working in corporate or someone writing a book or a musician or someone creating a product. um, they're all coming from this energy, this light of like raising the vibration on the planet. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it because it's
No, I'm
more of a
feeling it.
beingness.
I'm feeling it. Yeah.
It's more of a being than a doing, where even when we talk about elevating the vibration or ascending, there's like this gotta get to this place
Mhm.
energy,
Mm.
where it's more this level of beingness and really understanding of self and the operating system inside of each individual, and then how we're co-creating and working relationally. So I noticed my clients really all seem to have this calling, and there's almost like this time when I would be working with them in a session talking about them with their brand where I would get chills, like where we would kind of name this. Either they would name it or I would name it. And there's just like chills. There's something new happening here that when we allow the soul and the spirit to come along,
Mm.
right? That's where the magic happens because I think each person has a unique essence of their soul.
Mhm.
So we're all maybe, if you believe in like God or source or the universe, I think each individual is like a droplet of that with its own unique frequency, its own unique soul memories,
Mhm.
experiences, and maybe other lifetimes in this lifetime. Then this new earth vibration is about kind of really letting the past go, honoring the past,
Mm-hmm.
and bringing forth the wisdom and the lessons that will serve and creating the future. And anything that doesn't serve, it's just composting it. It's not about denying its existence, but it's composting it and
Mm-hmm.
allowing it to fertilize, to transmute into like that power for what's next. It's integrating that and coming into that place of being with presence
Mm-hmm.
in the moment, with love, even once we let go of enough of the protection. And that's where the creativity flows. And that's what I help people with in their brand and their business is like, how can you connect all the dots of your past and then use them in a constructive way to be the full expression of who you're meant to be now in service of the world, right? And then how does that express through brand design, through your logo, through your website, through your marketing? So that's my one main area of work. And I also work with people on like individual soul sessions who just want to focus more on the energetic soul alchemy. I do a little bit of that too, which is by no means to replace like a coach or therapy or any of that sort of thing. I think everything has its purpose in the world, and when done with true integrity, it's how it all works together. Yeah.
I love this approach to branding. And I can tell you this as an entrepreneur because when you get into the business world, you're trying to learn how others who've become very successful did it, right? So you try to follow in their footsteps. You try to do what they did, take the courses they took, the certifications, hire the same or similar companies that have the same philosophies that would get the job done. Again, yet again, you see what I just said? To get the
Mm-hmm.
job done. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, entrepreneurs are not every entrepreneur, okay? Let me correct that. Some entrepreneurs aren't starting their journey of entrepreneurship and building their business with the creative element, if that's the right word to say here.
Yeah.
Most start
Mm-hmm.
by the checklist, by the
Mm-hmm.
what works, by the goal oriented, by you do step one, step two, step three, you should see results,
Yep.
right? And that never resonated with me
Mm.
from day one. It
Yeah.
didn't feel right. It felt like something was being forced here.
Yeah.
And okay, perhaps that's delayed, if you want to call it a delay, which I don't believe that there's such a thing as a delay. Everything has its right timing. Perhaps it delayed my success, if you want to call it that, in the business world. But I stood strong in my belief and in my knowing, I should say, not even my belief, in my knowing that following that approach, I am being in disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I decided to allow things to take the course that they're taking, even if it's taking longer. Again, using the word delay, and I just use it for the sake of explaining what I'm trying to say here, but I don't believe in any delay.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started working on my branding by myself, where it feels as coming from a place of creativity, a place of me listening to my intuition, a place of I'm not just following what everybody else is doing. I'm being the unique me in this journey and loving the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Loving the journey, which includes struggles, challenges, mountains I gotta climb. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely okay with how I feel with my branding. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing the best that should be done. Again, should according to who, but it is what it is right now for the time being, taking its course. What's meant to be will be. How far it will go will go. When it becomes more booming than it is. And maybe it has nothing to do with any of that. Maybe it just has to do with the impact that I do with the few people that come into my world. And I've already made a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
My brand doesn't need to be on billboards for me to say I'm successful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm successful just by having this podcast here with you, having this beautiful conversation heart to heart, and many other guests that have been so privileged to have on the show.
Mhm.
These deep, meaningful conversations, that's success right there.
Yep, exactly. I think it's so much of defining what success means to you. Each person needs to define what success means to them, right? Because there are all these outside factors or ideas of success. And it's so funny that, there's mixed messaging too. On one hand, there's all this talk of enjoy the journey, it's about the journey.
Mm,
And then it's like, but success means it's these numbers,
mm,
right? Or the numbers, statistics, the analytics,
mhm,
the
mhm.
all of that.
Which is
So,
kind of the masculine energy of it.
yep. Yeah. And I think the balance is important, but really to me, it's about, I was thinking about this yesterday. It's about what does success mean to me? It's how, I don't know, it's how I feel at the end of the day. Because at the same time, sometimes I don't always feel great, but I
Of course.
know
Yeah.
I lived my day full out, expressed myself or created what I was meant to create, or I rested when I was meant to rest. And there's almost a level of peace or neutrality. It's like how much peace I
Mm,
have with myself and my life at the end of the day, knowing that I did my best,
mm,
whatever it was. It's an interesting dichotomy for me to work with being in branding and design because I
mhm,
have that perfectionist side of me that
mm,
can really get into the details. And I have the classical training. It's like a classical dancer. I think there's movies like dance movies like this where there's the perfect ballerina,
mhm, mhm,
but then they have to learn to loosen up to like
mm,
actually be, if just because you're doing everything formatically perfectly doesn't mean
mhm,
that there's the creation, the heart, the artistic nature there. And I think that's where the true life and the creativity shines through is when there's that life. And a lot of that does have to do with beingness and presence. Because, a lot of people create perfect brands, but they're more of a shell
mm,
that might be, featured in a book or statistically look like the perfect brand, the logo and the typeface, but it's more of a shell.
mm.
There's nothing inside, right? And it's empty. People feel that emptiness.
So true.
Yeah. So that's why I love working with people, similar to how you worked with yourself, if just guiding, it has to come from you, it has to come within you, your vision.
Mm,
People will skip to the strategy or what will be successful,
mm,
but they're not connected to themselves and their own vision. And they're even creating ideas they think they should create.
mm, mm.
um, versus what's, yeah, coming from their heart and soul calling. So it's a process, and a learning. I think a lot of people learn this. But
I
that's
think
really amazing. You were connected to that from the beginning. You just
yeah.
knew.
No,
Yeah.
I did have my moments, of course, where I second guessed myself and I
Hmm.
wondered if, okay, Rania, maybe it's time now you follow someone else's advice who knows about this stuff. But I believe that along the path up until now, I'm being guided because I am aligned on my path. I
Hmm.
feel it. I know, I feel that I am aligned on my path. And even when I sometimes try to make decisions, or not so much decisions, but just a thought, entertaining a thought of going in a direction that isn't aligned, I pay attention to the signs. The universe stops it.
Hmm.
I mean it. Like, it's so crazy that I've been looking for like a social media manager, someone to help me with some of the work that I'm getting done and strategies and whatnot. And I connected with someone, we had a talk, and she said she's gonna send me a proposal, and then she disappeared. And then she sent
Hmm.
an email like another month later and saying, I'm sorry, this, what's going on, but I'll get back to you. It's been another month. I haven't heard
Hmm.
from her. And I know she's a great person. I know her personally. So I'm not
Hmm.
taking any offense to it. But I looked at that as a sign from the universe that whichever direction I was heading into isn't what's right for me. that I must
Yeah.
do it myself because
Mhm.
I'm the only one that knows my brand. I'm the one that's feeling it. And even though it is more work on me to get all the work done,
Yeah.
but it feels like if someone else was gonna come and get involved, no matter who that person is, the essence that you talked about, the essence of my brand, of what it is I'm trying to portray, may, not necessarily, may get lost. But if it's all me, because it's all coming from within me, my creativity,
Mhm.
then perhaps it will be the way it's meant to be. Again, it's not going to be perfect. And I recognize that. I recognize that I'm going to be making mistakes. I recognize that there are things I don't know that I could do better. Very well aware of that. And knowing that, I still do that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And that's how you learn to know yourself well enough.
mm,
So when the time is right, it is possible to, if the time, when slash if the time
but
is
there has
right,
to be a time where you delegate something. You
to
can't give
ever
it
work with
yourself.
someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
strong enough in your own knowing of who you are that you can actually truly co-create with that other person so that they allow your essence to shine.
Yeah.
So you're not asking them to fill the void of where you don't know yourself
Yeah.
well enough. And a lot of people do that when branding, I think they skip to, oh, I don't really know what I want to offer, but my web designer will help me figure it out. Or
Mm,
they're not even conscious that's what they're doing, but
right.
they are doing that. So, I think a lot of that entrepreneurship, and that's where there is the value in doing it yourself
Yeah.
to know yourself well enough so that way you can really work with someone, like I say, in that true co-creative way to make sure you're, solid enough in yourself. And then in the co-creation is really that talk about interdependence, right? How to have that interdependent co-creative relationship that becomes possible
Mhm.
at a certain point, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
This has been a great conversation. Before I let you go, Jenna, for those that are feeling stuck in the conditioning, because we know that there are those who are and they are disconnected, are there any practical steps that you might share with us today?
Yeah, to me, it's really the vibration of play. I think for a long time on one of my websites, my kind of tagline was play with your spirit and the rest will flow. So you kind of have to look at your spirit, right? That part of you that's just like delighted and
Mm,
excited to grow, even if it's scary as hell, or like you gotta, hold hands with yourself and play like you would with a child or with a scared old person. Um, and that's not necessarily a step, but it's when you get into that vibration of play, you can start with the small things like, oh, today I'm gonna have something different for breakfast, or
mm,
you know what, I'm gonna take a walk right now in the middle of the day instead of working more. I'm gonna go walk around the block, or go to the local park, or buy a soccer ball and kick it around in the yard, or whatever.
mm, mm,
Whatever, just those small moments of play, or put on the your favorite song for 5 minutes and dance around. I think it's those little moments where you can give yourself permission to play, even, in the waking up in the morning and doing a little making a noise in bed, or I don't, who knows what it is, but it's those like allowing the inspiration to peek through in the little moments. And that's where you're reconditioning
mm,
yourself to welcome in your intuition and your spirit more and more, no matter how silly it seems. Children don't think about,
exactly.
oh, I'm playing a stupid game right now. They're just like doing whatever they're doing.
I think if we as adults start to mimic children, we'll actually be happier and we'll be more
Yeah,
creative and we'll be more
yeah,
successful if we
yeah,
just allow that child in us to
yep,
come out every once in a while and not be all uptight because, hey, I'm an adult, I'm supposed to behave this way, I'm supposed to be proper, I'm supposed to,
yeah,
like all these rules, right? That we've been, again, conditioned that we have to
yeah.
behave in order to be considered an adult.
Been crying, like sometimes you want to throw a fit, you know? it doesn't mean you have to like throw it at someone else
Yeah,
or,
yeah, yeah.
but
With
you
yourself.
can choose
Yeah,
when's appropriate, but is it appropriate to cry right now or whatever? There's the spectrum of the child from the joy to
yeah,
the emotions that maybe need to be felt, but
totally.
it's all that. So, yeah.
Just allowing yourself to be you.
Mm,
I guess that can sum up everything that we're talking about here is allow
yeah.
yourself to be you, allow yourself to live in the moment, in the present moment for what it is, good, bad, recognize it, allow your emotions, whatever it is,
Yeah.
process it. There's nothing to force you to do something you don't want to do or to be someone you don't want to be. Just sit back
Yeah.
and allow yourself to be.
Yeah, the existence, permission to exist,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And if you feel you've been stuck, disconnected, conditioned, manipulated, whatever you want to say, okay, you recognize that that was the case, but you're here now.
Mm,
You can choose a new start right here, right now.
mhm.
You can be reborn. And this time it's by
Yeah.
choice.
Yes, absolutely. You can welcome yourself if you were never welcomed into the planet on your birthday. Welcome yourself in each
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
You don't need it from the outside, from the external world. You don't need that validation.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
Hmm.
I love that, Jenna. I love that ending to this beautiful conversation that was just full of insights and wisdom and personal experiences from both our sides that we are sharing.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to have this conversation and happy to share with you.
Beautiful. And whoever wants to connect with Jenna for their branding needs, please do connect with her. Her information will be in the description. Before you hop off the train, if something in today's ride stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Hit follow and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Want to dive deeper or have a topic you'd love us to explore? I'm all ears. Drop your questions, thoughts, or suggestions. We're in this healing journey together, and your voice matters here. Just drop a message to guest@healingtrain.ca. I am listening. And until next time, keep on healing you and keep riding with me on the healing train.